What I thought was going to take me 5 years is going to take me 2 years to do now, right? So now, all right, I'm 3 years ahead of the game. How do I capitalize off that? And I'm still figuring that out.
That's good.
Get around those obstacles and make room to create opportunities. You are listening to the Around the Way podcast. And now, your hosts, Kyle King and Kiana Williams.
Welcome to another episode of Around the Way podcast, where we help you get around your obstacles and find a way to redesign your life. We are here. We are back with one of the GOATs of Charlotte. How you doing, Jerry?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Man, I'm feeling blacktastic. I'm feeling blacktastic. How are you feeling today, Kiana?
I feel good. I didn't know it was gonna rain today, but
yeah, it's one of those mornings.
yeah,
It's one of those
dark.
mornings. That means that he has to bring the light in this conversation. So I guess before we get started, could you just introduce yourself to the audience? Tell them a little bit about what you do, who you are, and let's get rolling.
Okay. So my name is Jerry Mercer. Not a native Charlottean, but I've been here since 1998. So just about as much as my adult life as I haven't been here. All around entrepreneur. I cut my teeth mainly in the mortgage business, residential side, and just kind of grew it from there and went off to building and other different entrepreneurial ventures, but primarily mortgage advisory is where I hang my hat and probably where I'm most known for.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So were your parents entrepreneurs?
Yes. Actually, my dad was a primary entrepreneur. My mom, involved in family businesses, I guess was kind of a quasi-entrepreneur, but the spirit's been in my family and, like I said, with my father since I can remember. So I guess I'm kind of born into it.
That's dope. That's dope. I guess walk me through, as a child in your home, with two essentially entrepreneurial parents. When did you first recognize that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Probably very early on, and the funny thing about it is, I guess I didn't recognize it, but others around me saw it in me. And as I got older,
talk to me more about that.
All right, so just early on, I guess kind of backtrack a little bit. My dad had me making cornbread in this restaurant at 5 years old, right? So by the time I was probably 10 or 11, I was managing my little stepbrother and kind of managing the shift or what have you. So to me, it was working with my dad, right? So it was natural, but as I've gotten older and Facebook has come out and things, and I hear from my friends in high school and actually in college, was like, I always knew you would be an entrepreneur. So they saw something that I never saw. It was just, I guess, kind of a natural and innate thing that it took me till adulthood to realize that's really what I was or what have you. But up until that point, it was just how we operated, how the family ran. I saw my dad with a bag of money from the end of the night sales under his car seat or what have you.
Under the car seat.
He was old school. There wasn't much banking going on.
Times have changed.
Exactly right.
Wow.
So and I just kind of soaked all that up, and then I guess it manifested itself in things that I did and how I looked at life or what have you. So
that's dope.
Here I am now, I guess 46 years old and still on that track, on that journey.
So do you think that, it's interesting because I know you from owning a restaurant, right? Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that you kind of started, you started talking about your story of you were making cornbread, at in the kitchen essentially.
Yep.
And when did you recognize that, hey, like I may want to own the restaurant instead of just serving a piece of what could be for restaurants?
Understood. No, that's a good question. The restaurant was really a real estate play for me. So people know me as owning a restaurant, but I was more involved in it from the building that I was in. Taking the ownership in the building, being able to resurrect a building that had been sitting for 3 years and creating a restaurant space. So I think all my investments have been steeped in real estate, which is where, like I said, I think my skill set, my gift lies. The restaurant was kind of an overlay on top of it. So if you will, just creating two businesses within one. If I can control the asset that I'm operating out of, then obviously I control my rent, which is a big component of the restaurant business or what have you. Yeah. So it was all a real estate play for me, and the restaurant was kind of an overlay over the top of that. I'm a big sports guy, so I use analogies a lot, right? So getting the building was like a double. If I could have turned around and put a successful restaurant on top of it, now we're creating a home run, right? So you can win a lot of games hitting doubles,
exactly.
But if you get that one sweet pitch, if you will, then it's time to try to knock that out the box. So that was the whole idea behind the restaurant. It was steeped in real estate, which is what I always rely back on because that's, like I said, that's innate to me, and I understand that better than I understand anything.
Now, would you say that the restaurant was the home run for you?
It would have been a home run, yes.
Talk to me about what happened. Because would have been.
Yeah. So it's just the upside of a restaurant business is, I mean, anything that has that high of a fail rate, clearly those who are successful in it have an upside that can lead to, things beyond their wildest dreams or what have you. Exactly. So I wanted to have the building to kind of have the firm base and then, see if the restaurant could take off the way I envisioned for it. It was a great undertaking. I would definitely do it again. Obviously, that venture didn't go as well, but that wouldn't be the first one that didn't go well. But, as long as your scorecard has more successes than it does failures, then you'll always come out on top. But it was even growing up in the business and then owning it was a totally different animal. When you work around family, a lot of people shy away from that, but our families has always been able to work well together. So that was actually a reversed effect. If I could have had 15 of my own family members in there, I would have been a lot more successful than 15 strangers who you had to motivate differently and things of that sort. So it was definitely an eye-opening experience. I would absolutely do it again. You take your lumps from some and you learn and you apply it to others or what have you. So I'm excited about going back at it at some point.
So when you think about, like you used the sports analogy earlier, and I'm an ex-athlete as well. So when you think about any athlete, they work their whole career to get to that big game. Let's talk about LeBron.
Okay.
He worked his whole career to get to an NBA championship and they lose. Right. So you worked, your career, you saw your parents as entrepreneurs, you found this, you saw this as the big home run and you saw the potential. The potential didn't work out. Could you talk to me a little bit about like how that told on you, how that maybe told on you, not even just from a business standpoint, not even from a man standpoint, but from a father standpoint, from a husband standpoint, because that was your home run.
Let me preface it because like a lot of people don't know, like, okay, I'm gonna just call you Uncle Jerry because you are my uncle, right. But it's hard for me because I want to say Jerry, but then I'm like, that's weird.
Right.
So like Uncle Jerry got married right before the restaurant or right after the restaurant opened, like maybe a month or two after. He had a child right before the restaurant opened. He was building a house right as $1 million house right as the restaurant was opening. Like he was going through he had bought a dog. Like there was all these like
second child came along.
Yeah, second child came along. Like all these things were happening at the same time he was entering into essentially a new space as a restaurateur. And like as me working there, people asked all the time like, is this a chain? Like, is this the first restaurant? I'm like, yeah, this is the first one he's opening. And they're like, wow, like that's crazy for it to be the number one. And he's coming from real estate. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So the name of the venture was 09 Restaurant Group. And that was intentional as we go through this. You'll see I'm intentional in mostly everything that I do. Meaning I thought of the idea in 2009. It didn't manifest itself until 2018. But that's just kind of how I am, right? So I had... And this is, I had every angle figured out, the success and the failures. And if it didn't work out, was my plan outside of that or what have you. And none of it was a surprise to me because I had already walked every step of it out in my head, both the good and the bad or what have you. So I knew, which is entrepreneurs, you have to know when to fold as well, right? So I knew when it was time to get out and move on. I knew when it was time to push certain buttons. And I learned from the experience every step of the way. So that's the reason why I wasn't turned off by it or jaded by it. It actually was a positive, and to tie it in with the kid side of things and just the family and being able to turn that positive into kind of where I am now, right? Just not really reinvent it, but just made a pivot out of that in teaching that not one thing can define you positively or negatively, right? You need to still have a plan after your plan, right? So I'm rarely surprised by anything. Like I said, we kind of talked about before the mics came on. I think that's my even keel nature, right? So I'm always, surveying the landscape and seeing what ways to do things better, what ways I should stop doing particular things, and then, kind of putting into an action plan and moving on from there, what have you. So I think just a general lesson of having things planned out, and if things don't work a certain way, knowing when to get out of things, when to go for things, when to dust yourself off, or how to dust yourself off, and what it looks like after you do that. So exactly. I'm a living example, I guess, everyday example, because the work is still going on. So it's by no means has it been finished yet.
I hear that perspective so much, and I guess when I hear you talk about it, it makes me feel like if I was to go through something like that, I would need maybe a few weeks or a month to kind of just recalibrate, right? Especially when you think about, like, kind of just going back to sports, whether it's football or basketball, after the Super Bowl or after you lose the biggest game of your life, like you need some time to kind of recalibrate. Walk me through is that the wrong, way to feel?
No, absolutely not. I think it all goes back to being true to yourself, right? Like everybody's just like any sort of relationship. Some people are over it the same day, the next day. Some people take a month, years, or never get over it, right? Yeah. So I think that's a individual thing. Long as you know yourself, it's a gift and a curse that I have the ability to block things out and move on, right? So in some ways in life that helps, and in some ways in life that hurts or what have you. On the business side of things, it's a complete block out and move on. I mean, you still take lessons from it as you go back and dream about it or what have you, but the effects versus the euphoria, the good side and the bad side are left when that left, right? And it's on to the next thing because it may take a different emotion to manage what you're doing at that point in time. So bringing old emotions in to something that's a new venture could be a detriment to you. Like you don't forget about it, right? Some things are still raw, but it's all the emotion and how you control what you're going. So literally the day that I shut down, my mind was already gone because the shutdown had already taken place in my mind. Like I said, I started that 8 years ago.
Exactly.
So my next phase was already being thought of once I realized that phase was probably ending. And then, lo and behold, the pandemic came, and that would have changed things. Not even a year later, right? Yeah. So to me, it was a blessing.
Exactly.
Like timing is everything. So I was able to pivot and move on at a time where hindsight tells you it was the best time to pivot and move on, right? Like having to deal with what I would have dealt with going through the pandemic probably would have stunted my growth. Yeah. As opposed to cutting ties and knowing it's time to go, and I'm still young enough to do great things and shift it, and here we are. Things are good today.
It's so interesting, man, because and even both of us being entrepreneurs, I think a lot of times entrepreneurs always talk about the wins, right? We always talk about the potential, like if this works out, but we're never intentional, like you talked about earlier, in preparing if it doesn't work out. So we don't have an exit strategy. And you also continue to talk about, like in business, you just block out things and keep moving. Is there something that you've blocked out personally that you wish you would have allowed to open up in your life?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. I'm kind of a butterfly effect type of guy, right? Like if I go back and say, I wish I would have done this, then I got to adjust the whole game, because if I would have done that, everything around it would have changed, right? So I can get in that rabbit hole of if I would have done this, if I would have done that. And, it creeps into your mind here or there. It just, that doesn't work for me. It may work for a different individual, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head, because where I am today compared to, where I come from growing up and things of that sort, it's all been good. If you take, 25 years of adulthood, and you can have 20 years of them be good years, right? Like I said, sports, I'll take 20 and 5 any time. Right? What I mean? Like, so it's just kind of how I look at things or what have you.
That makes sense.
It all has a part in the history, a part in what I do next, but how much of a part I let certain things play depends on what I'm doing. I'm a gray area guy, so I see both sides of all situations or what have you. I'm not pig-headed where it has to go this way or that way. I kind of let the environments control some things, and then knowing myself control the rest of it. Typically, that's a winning strategy for me.
Sure.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I know that you're a private person, because our family is that way.
Right.
And so when you're private, a lot of times you're responsible for getting what you need to yourself, because other people don't necessarily know that you need anything.
Good point. Yes.
So what is something over maybe the past year or so that you felt like you needed, but that other people didn't realize you needed that thing, and so you either went without it or you had to get it for yourself?
It's a good question. I'm just to pick me up, right? Just keeping along the theme of the restaurant or what have you, right? Nobody, because of how I am, nobody really know how my mind was geared to come out of that, if you want to call it. A lot of people call it a dark period, right? It was not dark at all for me or what have you, right? But just being your own cheerleader, it's just like getting up and working out, right? That takes a lot of mental fortitude to get up every day and get into your workout till it becomes a habit, so it's pretty much my mental fortitude, right? I had to, continue to give myself a pep talk. Like, human nature is after you come off what you quote unquote call an L or what have you, right? You start to doubt yourself. Never crept into my mind, so whatever it took to, you can do this, you got this. That was, a thing of the past or what have you. I woke up every morning. A lot of people say they're dreamers. I call myself a daydreamer, right? Because a lot of times when you dream at night, you don't know what you don't remember half of it. But I dream during the day. I mean, I dream in the car driving here and things of that. So I remember all of that stuff. So I let the daydreams take me into a positive place, and and God given talent that I'm good at executing on those dreams when I need to, and doing it at the time that I feel like I need to do it.
I feel like one thing that you said that I really like, and I talked to Kyle about this a couple of days ago, when the restaurant didn't work for you, like you said, it wasn't a doubt thing in your head. Like, it wasn't a reflection of you. And I say, like, that's a function of confidence, that, like, if this doesn't work, it's not that I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy of good things or whatever. It's that strategy didn't work, or
Absolutely,
like it wasn't my time, or it wasn't for me. It's just a different, like, perspective on the way you see the same situation.
Absolutely. You got to have that quiet confidence. And that's the reason I said I absolutely would do it again, because I've been able to just finance background and understand how numbers, money, people work, right? I've been able to pinpoint what I think was the main reason for the lack of early on success, right? I don't doubt that over time it would have become successful, X not knowing about the pandemic, because that would have ended everything, right? But I probably could have saw a way to make it a successful venture, but how much time, energy, and effort would I have to have put into it for the results that I thought was coming out of it, right? So it was a opportunity cost type of thing, or what have you. So absolutely, no, I'm an extremely confident person in myself. That's the reason why I said I'll definitely go at it again, because now I know the nuance of how to go at it in the space that I want to play in.
I have one more question.
Yes.
I know Kyle's writing
Okay.
viciously. So if you hadn't been married and had children, do you think that you would have stayed in it until it turned around?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. That
Because I know sometimes we do stuff because it's like, I can deal with more of this, but I know that they don't deserve to go through this with me, or they don't, I
That's
want
good.
more from them.
No. And maybe that should have entered in my mind a little bit more, right? But like I said, because that particular plan was put in place at a time when it was just me, a lot of decisions were made, not knowing that 8 years later, 7 years later, I would have a family or what have you. But kind of like I said, I actually built that strategy, if you will. I knew when I started thinking about this, I was in my late 30s. It was going to be a time to start having a mid 30s. It was going to be time to start having a family. So the possibility of that happening when I was going to do the restaurant was one of the different silos that I built out of what can come out of there. So when the family came around, it wasn't a huge detriment. Obviously, you gotta mindful of what time you come home and things sort of like that. But I was always a homebody, right? So the things that the married life and the kid life brought me to was things that I already enjoyed. I lived it up, a bunch before then. So I was ready to settle it down and become a homebody anyway. So
it's so interesting, I guess, what you're saying. It's kind of like you created the narrative and then actually aligned the steps to be able to get there in the future, right? Like you created the vision, and then years later you saw the vision, but you didn't just see the vision, you saw what comes with the vision. And then you were prepared to exit, but not really exit, but enter into who you already saw yourself being in the first place, right?
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
I think with confidence comes a sense of, it creates responsibility. Responsibility to continue to show up for your family. Responsibility to show up for your business. Responsibility to show up for yourself as well. Right. So I guess my question for you is, after work, what makes you feel, most relieved?
You mean now? Coming home to the family, right? I never thought, and my niece can attest to that, right? I was a single man up until I was probably 38, 39 years old. So most of my life was enjoyed around myself. It took a while to transition to that now, right? So, but just seeing the three kids grow up, looking at the change in what they become, talking to the wife about good and bad things at her job, right? And gaining interest in some of the things that she's doing just because it's a field. I'm a nerd by nature, right? So I like to learn a little bit about a bunch of different things. So just pouring into them when I get home and trying to decompress from my work day as best I can. I can never completely shut it off, but turning on a game and getting into what I call mindless behavior, right? Just watching the basketball dribble or the football be thrown and just enjoying that for what it is, and then getting ready to reconnect, I guess, back the next day or what have you. So it becomes a routine for me. Exactly. Being home a lot for the past year has created even more of a routine, right? Because it's not much variant outside of that. So
Definitely.
The challenge will come in the next coming months, right? When there's a lot more things to take your mind away, if you will. But I pretty much will probably be the same, right? Go home, take a game in, eat some good food, and chill out.
You talk about like this experience that's created that relieves you when you get home. Why is that important to you?
Because that's everything, right? I've been fortunate enough to been everywhere that I think I want to go, make as much money as I thought I would ever make or what have you. So it's no longer a motivator. I don't know if it ever really was a motivator, but lack of knowing anything else, I'm going to say that's what kind of kept me going or what have you. So being able to pour it into something else, right? So what are you out here making this money for, right? Who are you making it for, what have you? So the whole game has shifted for me from, operating for yourself to operating for a greater cause and a legacy now, right? Kids coming up and positioning them the right way. I've always been able to do it with my nieces and my nephew. Right now, you're able to do it with, your own seed, if you will. So, and you know that they're going to be a direct result of some of the things you do, both good and bad, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's parenthood, So that gets me going now, right? That I have something. I tell everybody a lot, in the job that I do now, and if I didn't have an outlet for it, whether it's a side business or something that I want to focus to, I would go crazy, right? Just, make good money and just put it in the bank and things of that sort is just not as sexy to me anymore as it used to be, right? If I can put a smile on the kid's face or on one of my kids' face where they see me home at hours where they didn't expect me to see home and see them run up and hug me and things of that sort. I mean, that's what it's all about, man.
Man, that's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think I appreciate Uncle Jerry's story just because we've had a lot of people come in here. Like, if you hear him talk, you wouldn't know that he was born and raised in Baltimore. So, like, went through high school in Baltimore. So I think that a lot of people lead with struggle and they lead with, like, deficiency. And then it creates these situations where it's like, oh, well, I know I got to get the money because I never had money, or I saw these people around me didn't have money and stuff like that. And, like, what he's just now saying is, like, money was never really that much of a motivator.
It's a sense of humility that is refreshing. You know what I'm saying? And that's why it's important. Even how you communicated that the influence that your parents had on you. And I feel like that's kind of what's led to you creating this experience within your own household. And I think with that, right, we talk about this a lot of times, there's a lot of pressure with either continuing to create or continuing to show up. Like you said, like, money's not a motivator, but you want to continue to create these experiences for your children or pass down lessons. And a lot of times we don't see the actual person, right? You block out stuff, you keep moving, you keep pushing, and that's your generation, right? Yeah. What's one question that you have the answer to that people just don't ask you?
That's a very good
Kyle.
question.
That's a good one.
I need to think about that.
Had to warm you up
That's
first.
a good one.
So I think I have a close circle who ask me a lot of things. So I consider myself, right, and this is, humble brag or not humble brag or what have you, however you want to look at it, right? Like I'm gifted in being able to see certain things in the financial world, right? So it's just a combination of my upbringing. Where I've grown, where I've worked, who I've worked around. I think I have a unique experience. And actually, I may talk myself in this question or what have you, where a lot of people don't understand that unique experience until I start talking about it. And you may ask me, what do you mean by this unique experience or what have you? But it's allowed me the opportunity, especially in the market we're in now, where the real estate market's going well and in financing and interest rates and all, the stock market and all that stuff. I don't know what it is. It's not a gift to me, right? There's a bunch of people out here. I can see that. It's kind of like I can see numbers, so to speak, right? Like I can see how things work and how it's kind of hard for me to explain, right? It's just, Kanye, for me, it was in a different world, right? Where he used to say, I can see music. And that resonated with me because I understood what that meant, right? Just in my own art form or what have you. So I think my gift and the things I have some of the answers to, people lean on me a lot for it. I don't think but they just don't know how I came about that approach. But the people that are really close to me don't ask that question. They've seen the results over the years, right? And they've seen things manifest itself in what we talked about early on. So before it became a career of mine to be an advisor, I was that to people who were close to me in certain areas for as long as I can remember. So like I said, the one thing I think I have not the answer to, right, but have figured out more than most, those who are close to me do already rely on me and pour into it, right? Like they don't know how I came about it, but they understand that, there's something there or what have you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Could you give us some game on what you see so that we can?
Just kind of where this whole, real estate market's going now, interest rate market's going now, where a lot of people see, all man rates are going up. I just so happen to know what happens with, and it's not anything personal to me, what happens with banks when rates start to go up and how they tend to act. And then that's why I position myself in some of the things I'm doing now, predicting 3 and 4 years down the line. So, banks, when interest rates go up, banks make more money. The spread is a lot greater, right? They can lend money at a lot higher spread. So what eventually happens in that instance is if you're going out and you guys are entrepreneurs and you want to run a business and you want to go buy a building or do something, when the banks are making good money, they tend to focus on the creme de la creme of their clientele because that's where they feel like they have the least amount of risk. Well, that's going to leave a whole layer of middle tier individuals who are priced out, if you will, or left to the wayside by large institutions where everybody is taught growing up. That's where you should go, right? At least in my generation, put your jacket on and your tie and you go sit down with a banker at Bank of America or whatever it was or what have you. Well, the real money is moving outside of that, right? Those institutions have a set client and they want to, pander to the base of those who have, institutional accounts and things of that sort. There's a pretty damn good career dealing in the middle market. So I've been positioning myself to, as these rates start to rise and these banks tighten up or be more selective of who they want to deal with, that's going to disenfranchise a whole mass of entrepreneurs who may be looking to advance their businesses but don't know how to access anything from an SBA loan to, I want to buy this building that we're having this podcast out of.
Exactly.
I'll be the guy for that.
So
what should
you already know. It just got spicy for me. Yeah, we got time. So I guess, before we go on a commercial break, could you give us one thing, millennial entrepreneurs, what do we need to be doing to position our money for the next 3-4 years so that we can get ahead of this curve that's getting ready to happen?
So I'm gonna use the restaurant, and we keep going back to that, right? Mm-hmm. Save up as much as you can. The number one reason for failure of the restaurant, I thought I had enough money, put it away. I needed 2 times what I had put away. Wow. So it wasn't the operation or not knowing what to do. I put my time in. I went to Johnson & Wales beforehand, right? So I studied my craft because it was 9 years in the making. And I had a decent amount of money. People would have saw success. I needed more. So if you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur or going out on your own or leaving where you are or whatever it may be in the next 2 to 3 years, if it's that short term, say within 5 years, stack the money up. Be ready for, for
what would be a number, just to quantify this to, because you're a finance guy, measurable. What would be a number that would be a good number to have saved and ready to roll?
So if you really learn your business, then you know how much it's going to take you to operate in the first year. Double that.
Okay.
Right. That's just a minimum. Yep.
We're going to go on a commercial.
Okay. All right.
Yo, this is still...
All right, welcome back, everybody. We are here with Jerry Mercer. I don't want to say serial entrepreneur because I think that weakens it, but entrepreneur, lifelong entrepreneur. Absolutely. Do you have anything you want to say before I?
Yeah, one thing that you said earlier that really stuck with me, right, is that you see numbers, right? And it's very interesting. My background's in finance as well, so my degree's in finance, and numbers speak to me, and I can see trends and different things, and I feel like I always find where the money's going to be, and that's where Kiana, literally, I can always see it. Yep. And Kiana's like, how do you always do it? I can create something because I just see trends in different markets. Yep. But one thing that you said is I see problems and I can create problems and solutions and all these different things. What's one thing that you'd want to be better personally? Whether it's a relationship, whether it's, family, what's one thing that you've reflected on that you may have answers to, but may create some controversy in one area, but you would want it to be a little bit better?
So I probably need to, in some areas, refine my approach to how I deal with certain individuals, right? I've made it to a point in my life in being my own boss or what have you that a lot of times I can't take BS from people. And sometimes you need to nuance that, right? Where I'm getting better at it or what have you, but it may strain a relationship in how you deliver certain things to people, right? So, and then actually that's perfect. My delivery in certain messages. I think I'm good at varying that to the individual to a certain degree, right? So getting even more nuanced in how you coaching, right? Like how you treat your, position 1 versus position 12. You got to have different conversations, although you're trying to get the same message across. And I've always known that, and I've always been that. As you get a little bit older, you stray away from that. Like we use grandparents, for example, right? They have no coof, right? Exactly. So,
I've done my dues.
So as you get a little older, but probably stepping back into that a little bit, because now there's a different class of millennials, right, who have entered business and adulthood, where now you're dealing with, so there's just a different perspective of individuals that if you're going to be successful, you're going to run across those individuals now. So understanding them a whole lot more. And I'm a sales guy through and through, right? And understanding how people work and what makes them tick or what have you is something that I try to learn just because I know I may have to deal with that individual or that type of individual in business. So that's pretty much it, right? Just being more nuanced in my message to certain individuals that I'm dealing with, just, ways to get things through to them will make the whole more effective, if you will.
I think what we're seeing a lot of right now is it's kind of like generations are clashing instead of collaborating together. You have the boomers, you have the millennials. Who's like the people in between the boomers and the millennials?
That would be Gen X.
Yeah, Gen X, and then millennials, and then all the other people, right? All the other ones. So I guess, why is it important for you, right? And, you talked a little bit about from a business perspective, but why is it important for that merge to happen where you're taking time to really understand the nuances and how you communicate more effectively to people?
Well, it's my personal life that leads it anyway. I got an 11-year-old son at home, right, who's about to enter in his own age. I joke with my wife a lot. She doesn't like to hear it, but she's a late millennial. When she hears this, she'll probably hit me or something like that or what have you. But so having to deal with personalities at your house, right, and which is the most important place, right? The home has to be pretty much in shape, and that helps me deal with the perspective when I go outside the house, because all my son is, and use my wife as an example, is a microcosm of the experiences from the time when they came up. And there's a common thread amongst individuals who grow up in those areas, right? Just like all of us Gen Xers think we have a common thread together, right? Our common thread is hip hop. You see what I'm saying? Like a lot of us have grown up in that, words have taught us how to move and things of that sort, right? So we share a common bond, and I'm assuming, the digital age and the internet age is going to create a common bond amongst individuals who are born in that day and what have you. So I understand that, and I don't try to force my ways and how we did things. I try to understand how things are being done. Doesn't necessarily mean I agree with it, right? The new math, old math thing, you hear about now, right? So don't necessarily mean I agree with it, right? But if they're getting to the same answer at the end, I'm cool with it, like I'm cool. It doesn't have to happen my way. Yeah.
I got one last question before we switch it up. So when you talk about getting to the same answer at the end, right? You have, your children who are definitely part of different generations. You have your wife that is a late millennial. You have you, Gen X. Yeah. What answer is your family together trying to get to?
Man, I think the question changes all the time, right? Just happiness, right? Which is hard as hell when, 5 personalities, right? All of various ages. So I think we're just trying to get to a place where we're happy every day, content, if you will. I know some people see that as a negative word, but I think in family, it's for life. So some weeks, months, years, days are going to be content days, right? And some are going to be, but mainly striving for happiness in the kids, right? Happiness in my relationship. And I think that'll manifest itself in a lot of positive ways, from school, from going out to work and knowing you got the support behind you and things of that sort. So happiness is key to me, right? And that what makes individuals happy, what makes family happy are different. So our happiness, I guess, is probably a better word of putting it, right? And we know what it is, what it feels like, and we strive for it every day. It'll be some same as anything else, mainly successes, a few failures, but I think we're on the right track, and we're still early in all this, right? It's 3 years, 4 years into all of this, so it's still a growing experience,
So I can take it away now.
Take it away.
All right, Uncle Jerry. There is a red box in the middle of the table.
Oh, Lord. Surprises.
Inside of this box are some questions. I would like for you to take the red box, pick a question, read the question, and answer the question.
Oh, wow. Stuff like this I like. Right? All numbers right here. Oh man, when was the last time you cried?
Oh gosh.
What did the experience that you cried about teach you about yourself? Wow, the last time that I cried. So
Let's get the mic.
okay. Oh, let me think about the last time that I cried. Wow.
I didn't think you were gonna get that one.
That's an interesting one. I had a lot of teary days over the past 2 years, right? I'm just trying to figure out, I don't know what the actual last one. All right. Ugh. I'll just come out one of the more memorable times, if you will, that I cried, both good and bad, right? So, business-wise, I cried the day that we received the certificate of completion on the restaurant, right? And it wasn't an emotional thing. I guess it was an emotional. It was a bunch of pent up. You did this to that point because keep in mind, it was about getting the building finished for me first. The restaurant was second, right? So the certificate of completion was about the building. Exactly. And that was something that I knew I can do, or I thought that I could do, and it finally happened, right? So those were more relief and tears of joy because all my family had kind of gone through that with me, right? So that was one point. I also cried, real talk, right, is a year into the restaurant where I got a call about, if you don't make this car payment, we're going to come take it from you, right? So both sides of it or what have you, right? And it wasn't about the car or what have you. It was the emotion that I don't know what poured out in me. I mean, I've always driven nice things and had nice things I could care less about, right? You know what I mean? Like that, but I don't know what made me cry behind that, right? So I'm still trying to figure that stuff out within myself. So that's some of the lessons that, you know, I bought from that past or what have you. But those were the two memorable times a year or so ago. I've been so laser focused since I got out of that the past 18 months. I can't remember crying about anything, right? It's been grinding head down and all of that. But those were the last two emotional moments that popped to my mind when I read the question or what have you. Was the second part of it. Oh, what did it teach you about yourself? And my niece probably could tell you this. Up until the past 2 years, I don't think I've cried as much as my life, or 2 years ago or what have you. I didn't know I had that emotion in me, to be quite honest with you. So that was a learning experience, and how do you deal with it? And as men, right, I didn't feel less of a man for it or whatever like that. It actually was kind of therapeutic. Yeah. I'm like, man, I should cry more. I was like, man, I probably should cry a little bit more often, right? Just don't become a serial cry. Not too much. Become a serial cry, right? But like, it was a release behind that or what have you. And that's the first things. I'm sure there's been a time since then, right? But those are the first things that popped to my mind on the emotional side of things. I've probably shed a tear watching some of the stuff I've watched over the past 2 years, just with a lot of the social unrest and things of that sort. I'm pretty sure that I probably shed a tear on that. I don't want to show any disrespect to that, try not pinpointing the exact time or what have you, but I'm sure something happened over the past 2 years that kind of made me shed a tear a little bit. Nothing kid related, anything like that. Like I'm typically, I take all that in stride. Like I said, my niece to tell you that as well. Like, dust yourself off, get up, or come, let me give you a hug or whatever. Let's take it down for a minute and then let's get back to yourself. You didn't say
that to me.
No, I know. I learned that. As you get older, you learn that later on in life. It was more just pick yourself up with my nieces and nephews, right? Now that you start getting, you're seeing a spitting image of yourself and not necessarily in looks, but in mannerisms and all that, you get a little bit more emotional behind that. But, that's, the first thing came to mind is box. Yeah,
that's powerful. Yeah. I think I love what you said, like identifying that, before that happened, it's like, dang, I do need to express more emotion, more often, especially as men. Yeah. So as you've reflected on that and as you've identified that, what's one emotion that you feel that you would want to express more, but it makes you sometimes uncomfortable to do so?
A lot of people say they like to hear the truth. So I would like to give the truth 100% of the time, right? But it's not for every, and I don't mean truth versus lie, right? It may be, and use my relationship again, right? My wife always says, was it lies of omission or something like that? So I think that's a woman's thing.
That's definitely a woman's answer.
So, but it may be not time to say certain things at a certain time, right? So, I would want to be as truthful as I can with individuals all the time, for better or for worse. And I only say that because kind of what we talked about earlier is learning what makes everybody tick. You can be as truthful as you can with me one of the things, the simplest thing, but my mom raised me on sticks and stones, break your bones, but words would never hurt you, right? So words have very little effect on me, but it's not like that with everybody else. So how I can take and big boy myself, myself up if somebody says something, everybody's not built like that, right? And sometimes you can't say certain things because you may not be looking to break people down, but how you said it, the time you said it, your voice inflection, your body language out of that might have caused the unintended consequence that you didn't mean to happen. So that's one thing. I wish, I could be more truthful all the time, and I am most of the time, but like sometimes people need to hear it, and sometimes you can't give it to them.
What's, this may be interesting. What's one truth that you're holding that you need to say? Because that person's not here or that situation. What is one truth that you would want to communicate, but you haven't been? Maybe you don't have the tone or the timing or all of those different things right now. What's one truth that you would want to share, just to kind of just get it off your chest, that you've been holding on to?
Oh man, I'm sure there's a lot, to be quite honest. If you're around me, you'll hear me say everything is situational, right? So the actual situation, I'm trying to think of a situation because that could be a truth with my niece or a truth with you or what have you, right? That each one, two different things or what have you. So I know you don't like to hear this. I'm going to punt on that. I don't think I have anything that I can think of off the top of my head that I really need to get off my chest because I probably would have done it. Like, that's why I say I'm working on that, right? Because eventually I wind up doing it, and it's like, oh man, maybe should have done that at the time. So,
do you have any truths for me since I'm here? Because you did use me as an example.
Yes, not now.
Okay.
Right, but we've talked about in the past or what have you, right? I think in kind of how our family is, right? Everybody may say, oh, that's cruel or what have you, but my family will get this. I think Kiana's probably the brightest I'm not even going to call it education, just natural smarts of the three kids. And at one point in time, I wanted her to do more with that, right? But an entrepreneurial path doesn't have a straight line or what have you, right? So I'm happy of where it is right now, but that may not have been there 3 or 4 years ago, right? So all worked itself out and streamed, and, so that if you want to, that would be one thing or whatever, right? Right?
Thank you.
She just
I didn't know that's what you was gonna say. I didn't know that.
She just wanted to hear something.
No, it's all good. I gave it to her. Yeah,
this is good, man. I think we talked a lot about family business, kind of overcoming all of the objections or hurdles that you faced, but also the importance of truth and being real. And I guess my question is, you've accomplished so much. Great father, great husband, a man of family, a man of faith. Clearly, who are you working to become?
Oh man, that's a good question. How I don't know who that person is, right? Because I'm just going to take it all in because, like I said, try to be true to what I said earlier. Life experiences is going to shape who that man becomes. I know who he is right now, right? But who I'm going to become, you got to tell me what are the factors, right? Using our math, right? What are the factors that's going to go into me being who I am, right?
Let me challenge that.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah.
So you're a very intentional person.
Yeah.
And you're very big in manifesting things before they're actually manifesting. So I'm not going to call you on it in my truth. You're working towards something.
Right.
And it's big. I feel it. What is that?
All right. So I am now 46 years old, right? So I had to recognize the step back that I took over the past 2 years. How I make it to retirement, or what I consider retirement, if you will, has to have changed itself, right? Because reverse engineering to certain things, right? I'm not going to save up enough money just by naturally doing my business and live off of that when I get to 60 or what have you. So I'm currently in the process of creating what my next 5 years look like, right? As far as what do I want, whether it be on the real estate path, whether it be growing my finance business or what have you, or doing both at the exact same time or what have you. So I'm in the process of still working my way through what my next I gave myself 5 years once I shut the restaurant down, right? In 5 years, at the age of 50, I want to be here. We just sold our houses as our family, right? So we need to build another home. I build every home that I own or what have you. So we need to build a house, find a piece of land, which we, knock on wood, close on that in 2 weeks, right? So that's the first stage of what I saw as my reclamation to the age of 50 or what have you, right? And the steps along the way have been quite fun, but in the next 2 or 3 years, I need to also have in place, whether it be via partnerships, via myself or what have you, the rights to more land to cover or to take part in the great divide of having affordable housing, right? So I see a market in that or what have you. How that market looks is still forming itself, but I'm positioning myself with, I know it's going to be in constructing something, whether it's commercial or residential. I need to acquire the land to do that. So that's kind of where I am in my next 5-year phase of my life. How it looks, I'm leaving that open-ended, right? Because I don't want to say I have a straight path to something where, you know, certain nuances can happen. It can cause that path to vary a little bit. Give you an example. I mean, this mortgage business, right? The financing business is crazy right now. You guys probably, I mean, obviously know about it or what have you, right? I didn't expect that when part of my 5-year plan that it would be as gangbusters as it is. I didn't expect to have 8 people working under me this early on back into the business or what have you. So now I have to take that input and add that to the next 5 years. I mean, it's created a greater opportunity and a greater reach for myself. So I'm still processing how I'm going to use that reach now and add it to what I had been thinking about for the past 2 years. Right now, I got to add more ingredients to the mix, so to speak. So, intentional in broadness, I guess, is kind of where I am now. Right, I'm letting it all come in. Right, I know. I'm kind of controlling how a lot of it is coming in, just because I set it up this way or what have you. Now the results are completely, I'm not gonna call them surprising, expected, right? But to the level where they are is a little bit of a surprise. So now I need to adjust. What I thought was going to take me 5 years is going to take me 2 years to do now, right? So now, all right, I'm 3 years ahead of the game. How do I capitalize off that? And I'm still figuring that out.
That's good.
Yeah.
When you talked about ingredients, right? And ingredients is important in making anything, and even as you know, you know, still a restaurant owner.
Yep.
What's one ingredient that you need right now in a person that is going to help you accomplish your 5-year goal?
So we just talked about that a little bit before the mics came back on, right? I need someone to pour this knowledge into. I can build a team out in what I'm doing now is my day job, so to speak, right? To 20, 25 people. I can't manage 20 to 25. I don't want to manage 20 to 25 people by myself, right? So having someone, but I have to do it because I treat those guys and girls like my brothers and sisters and kids if they're young enough, right? I got one millennial on my team. He's like my kid. And I owe it to them to give them what I've gained throughout these 10 or 15 years, right? So as long as I don't have anybody else to pour it into, it's always going to be on me to give them the game to how to be successful in that. And it's just not where all my intentions lie anymore, right? Like I want to manage, always do this, right? But I want to manage these real estate projects that I'm talking about. And my wife is a physician. I've been pushing her to go the entrepreneurial route for the past 2 or 3 years, right? Private practice. I want to, whether it be monetarily or, and I joked with her about this probably a couple of months ago, whether it's her secretary sitting at the front desk, I want to do some of that stuff, right? And know that the other side of the business is still running the way it should be running because we set it up right? And I got the right people in place to do it. My success in life has always come off my hard work and a little bit of the back of the guys and mainly guys, right, who's worked for me. So I'll never take that for granted. And I always pour into them for better or for worse. Like I take their problems home too sometimes, right? But those guys go through a brick wall for me because they see that I care about all that stuff. So, so that's the one thing that's lacking right now in my growth is to be able to pour what I have in my main business into someone who can help that business continue to grow.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I think it's kind of like the billboard approach, right? You want to be able to put something out there that people can see that can really be able to stick with them when they're driving, you know, whenever, right? Because I could be in China, but I still have a billboard here in North Carolina that you can see in something that I've presented. So, you know, looking at the billboard approach, what's one message that you have that you would want to give, whether it's on a billboard or whether it's in people's hearts? What's that one message that you would want to leave people with?
Believe in yourself. All right, that's it. Just believe in if we work together and that comes out in your actions, in your intentions, in your words or what have you, right? And there's a lot of people who have confidence in themselves but are shy in expressing that. In, you know, for the longest, right, we've sequestered women in expressing that, right? And there's a lot of confidence. I actually, you know, real talk, much rather work with women than I would men or what have you, you know. just because.
Don't do that. Don't try to make that. Don't do that.
It's like we've been here the whole.
Like just the experience. I'd much rather work with women than I would men in my professional life. But confidence in yourself manifests itself in so many different ways, and I don't know this to be fact, right? But I would assume. You hear, like I said, Tyler, you hear, one of the common thread of most millionaire self-made people is a real estate transaction somewhere, right? That's on a tangible thing. Yeah. I think a common thread that a lot of people of success have is whether it's quiet or loud confidence in themselves, right? Like, and like I said, the tie back into hip hop, right? You can be like a Diddy type of person, right? Who's clearly confident, right? But he let everybody knows it, right? Facts. Jay-Z, for example, or Dr. Dre, right? Equally as successful, but not as until you get into the music, right? Yeah. And, just not outwardly as boisterous or what have you like that is another one. Was both equal success, right? I think both doesn't lack the confidence. They just manifested a different way, but the results is a common link of mine. I think they are. You have to think you can do it if you're going to leave your company or leave your situation and go out on your own, right? There's a level of confidence, whether you success or failure. There's a level of confidence. I'll big up you for trying it. Like that's just kind of how. There's definitely a level of confidence that you've exuded in actually just taking that step. Thinking about it is one thing, but actually taking a step is a whole nother game for me.
That's good, man. Yeah. That's good. And I see your shirt that says Hoodie season.
Oh yeah.
What season are you in right now, and what season are you preparing for?
Oh wow, that's a good question. I'm in grind mode season right now. It's all about the grind. And what I'm preparing for is kickback Las Vegas season. The grind mode gets me to that, right? Like that's so just kind of using that. I'm a gambler, man, right? I like to take nice trips. I like a casino. I like a little risk. I like to test my math and stuff like that.
You think I like the casino? Yeah. It is him.
But I don't do that unless I go there with everything in my pocket I'm willing to lose.
Yeah.
Right? So to get to that point.
Talk more about that point. Yeah. That's deep. I feel like it's deep because I think a lot of people celebrate before they actually should be celebrating, right? A lot of people are taking trips on rent money versus actually taking trips where they can just be free. So talk more about that point.
So perfect. My sister and my best friend, I call my brother, and they, take trips to the casino. And I was the casino guy, right? I was the one who gathered everybody. If it was a trip, come with me. Rooms are free. Yeah. I got everything covered. So that's what everybody knew me as is for as long as I can remember or what have you. And I haven't been back. And the reason why I haven't been back is because I know myself. I know how I like to go and how it's fun. And it's fun for me when I go in there with everything that I take in there. I can afford to lose it, right? And that's a liberating thing for me. And I go in there and it's not nervous and I'm having fun. You see how I am now. You wouldn't believe how I am. I'm high-fiving strangers. You can't do that right now, right? But that's part of the experience to me, right? If it was tied up, if it was just about going in there and winning the money or what have you, I wouldn't do it.
That's the experience.
Right? It's about the whole experience. And if I go there and I had a good time and I lost everything in my pocket, I came here to lose all that, right? I'm not mad about it or what have you. And real talk, I can be like that because I could always come back home and make it all back in the next month, right? So I want to give people all the glory side to it. It's a reason because of that, because I knew I also had the skill set to come back and grind it out and make back what I lost or what have you. So it took a lot of pressure off of it.
That's deep.
Yeah.
This is good. Yeah. This is good. What you got?
Well, on that note now, because I was on the edge, because you're going to Atlantis, right? Mm-hmm. So you might as well come too, because I didn't know if I was going to go.
Atlantis.
There's a casino in Atlantis.
Oh, yeah, we
so
there.
Of course, that's where the next vacation.
4th of July, that's mine.
4th of July,
I'm looking forward to it.
I'll be there on the 3rd.
Right.
You got to come so you could be gambling like he be doing.
Nah, that's lit. So I guess, man, this has been... It's been an inspiring conversation, really. Just so reflective, so refreshing. And I think everything that you said was, what we needed, right? In our generation, our complexion, just our people definitely needed. Because you covered so many different things, business, family, the importance of expressing emotion, identifying losses, but also being able to celebrate the wins, but knowing when you celebrate the wins.
Absolutely.
So I guess my last question for you is, what would be one question that you would want people to ask about themselves before they go into their next season?
Oh, good question. I would want anybody to ask about themselves. How did I get here? Right? What are my value adds into what I'm getting ready to go into? right? And that could be a collection of life experiences or your most recent experience. But I'm a good, so when I say being a truth teller, it's also being a truth teller with yourself, right? I have a good grasp on where I think I am and what my weaknesses and my strengths are. So understanding yourself is always going to be my piece of advice to anybody looking to go into a particular area, into adventure, back out of a venture, into a relationship, whatever it may be, knowing what you're bringing to the table. You're not the hammer every time. Sometimes you're the nail, right? So extract the most that you can out of whatever position you're in, because sometimes you will be the hammer and sometimes you will be the nail, and understand when you are each one and using that to your advantage.
That's good.
So.
How did I get here? All of our audience members, ask yourself that question. Everybody listening right now, ask yourself, how did you get here? Where do you want to go? And what steps, what people, what resources that do you need to be able to close the gap? We're here with Jerry Mercer, and this is the Around the Way podcast. We'll see you guys next episode.
Bye, guys.